readers,
reviewers,
countrymen.
lend us your ears. Good morning, afternoon, day and night to everyone who's watching now. Today we will be reviewing The Councillor by E.J.Beaton, which we both read in the past week.
Yeah, welcome guys. This is our first review on the channel. We're really looking forward to giving our thoughts on The Councillor by E.J.Beaton, which I think was a brilliant read. I really enjoyed, and we are really looking forward to talking about it with all of you.
Okay, before we get into the nitty gritty,
The meat.
the bare bones of this review, we just want to say a quick thank you to Julie Crisp, who kindly gave us both a digital copy of The Councillor before release.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
So firstly, we'll just do a short author overview about E.J.Beaton. The Councillor is actually her debut, which is, considering how great it was, what a surprise.
Yeah, pretty mind-blowing. E.J.Beaton studied literature and writing at university, and it really makes sense that her PhD thesis was about Machiavellian politics in Shakespearean drama and fantasy literature, which definitely, I think, plays a massive role into her writing in The Councillor.
Yeah, I think it really shows that that is her passion, and it really filters into The Councillor. So next up, we'll read the book blurb that is on Goodreads. So there will be no spoilers because it's a spoiler-free video. So if there's any mention of events that happen, it is because it's in the blurb.
So, this Machiavellian fantasy follows a scholar's quest to choose the next ruler of her kingdom amidst lies, conspiracy and assassination. When the death of Iron Queen Cerelyn Bray fractures the realm of Illyria, Lysande Prior, the palace scholar and the queen's closest friend, is appointed councillor. Publicly, Lysande must choose the next monarch from amongst the city rulers vying for the throne. Privately, she seeks to discover which ruler murdered the queen, suspecting the use of magic.
Resourceful, analytical and quiet, Lysande appears to embody the motto she was raised with: everything in its place. Yet while she hides her drug addiction from her new associates, she cannot hide her growing interest in power. She becomes locked in a game of strategy with the city rulers, especially the erudite Prince Luca Fontaine, who seems to shift between ally and rival. Further from home, an old enemy is stirring. The magic-wielding White Queen is on the move again, and her alliance with a traitor among the royal milieu poses a danger not just to the peace of the realm, but to the survival of everything that Lysande cares about. In a world where the lowborn keeps their heads down, Lysande must learn to fight an enemy who wears many guises, even as she wages her own battle between ambition and restraint. So, a pretty cool book blurb. That definitely had me hooked.
Yeah, after reading this blurb, I thought, I knew that I wanted to try The Councillor, and I thought this isn't really the kind of novel that I'm used to reading, the kind of even the kind of, you know, the genre within fantasy that I'm used to reading. But boy, was I surprised with how much I actually enjoyed this. So let's go on over to our thoughts. So we're going to split up our reviews on this channel into different sections, talking about the various areas within books that what we kind of look for, what we enjoy in our reading, and what we might actually put on our reviews on Goodreads and that kind of thing on Grimdark Magazine and on Book Nest as well. So first of all, let's talk about the characters. That's probably what William and I enjoy the most, isn't it? Don't you think that? We really love reading about the characters. I think if you've got a novel that you can't get behind the characters, then it really takes it away from the overall feeling, the overall art, probably what the author wanted as well.
And we can safely say that The Councillor definitely did not do that. So we were very impressed with the characters. I think personally I felt that it's rare that I get to read a book that has such a wide range of just fully developed characters. I often feel in books that characters sometimes initiate actions that are driven by plot instead of their character. But I thought what was just brilliant and really fresh was that every single character had their own motivations and agenda that really justified their actions, and that's something that I look for, and I was so pleased to find in The Councillor.
Yeah, definitely. I think immediately I really liked our main character, Lysande Prior. and she's a young scholar. I think she's in her early 20s, isn't she? And she is everything that a book lover is used to. You know, she loves being in her study. She loves reading. She likes translating old books.
She's a scholar.
Yeah, 100%. And immediately I felt connected to her. Just her personality. She's quite fiery, but she's also she's very clever. I felt like she was really thinking about how to kind of play, the Game of Thrones, as it were. So immediately, as it said in the blurb, the character Cerelyn Bray, who is the queen of this realm, is murdered, and she and Lysande Pryor, the main protagonist, is a close confidant of the queen, and she is chosen to be the councillor, which basically means that it's her job to choose the next ruler of the realm. And now what that does is it opens the avenue for loads more characters, like an influx of lots more characters, doesn't it? But what I really like about how Beaton handled this was that she introduced, I think there were four rulers, weren't
Yes,
they?
there's four different rulers.
Four different rulers, but each one felt so differently. I think it would be really easy to make each ruler feel very similar.
Yeah.
But she gave them such a twist, and immediately they all felt so different, even though they're all very linked. They're all lots of them, but their personalities were immediately different, and I really enjoyed how she handled those characters, and also the secondary characters. That it didn't really feel like a massive cast, did it?
No.
To me, I think it could have been a massive cast if you've read something like Joe Abercrombie, where you see in the first law in Adua, there are lots, in the political area, there are lots and lots of characters, and some of them might blend. But here, she's trimmed the cast down to really make it as effective as possible, which I think definitely works.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well as making these characters believable and just authentic, E.J.Beaton doesn't limit herself to a specific type of character to do that. What I found even more impressive was that there's such a wide range of personalities, as Ed was saying. The rulers, there's 4 different kingdoms and there's 4 rulers from them, and they all exude their own cultures, and they're quite similar cultures, but they have their own interestingness of details, and it's really exuded in the characters. One of the main ones is Luca Fontaine, who I saw E.J.Beaton tweeted that she mentions him to be a bit like a Loki character from the Marvel franchise, and you really see that in his depiction. And he was such a unique character. I think that's the main thing that we took away from this, is that the characters will remain in our minds for a very long time because they are so standout, and I think we pride ourselves on reading quite a lot. And for characters to stand out this much, we were really impressed.
So next we'll talk about the plot, which is another thing that we look for in our fantasy books. So Will, what did you think about the plot overall? What were your feelings?
Well, I think as Elio said in the blurb, it's Renaissance-inspired and Machiavellian fantasy, which personally I've never read before, and that really conveys the plot of the book. It's driven by political intrigue combined with those unique characters. It's very cat and mouse at times. You're trying to find out new bits of information, and Beaton slowly drip feeds more and more that gets you more and more intrigued.
Yeah, and I find the plot really feeds into the characters. Again, going back to the characters, how it's political driven and it's also character driven. All of the actions, they really link to what the characters actually do. It never feels like something happens in the plot just for the sake of, for plot's sake, really. It feels like really each decision is backed up by how we actually see the characters, which I really like. I also like how immediately Lysande is a very strong character, and although she's in kind of a world that's completely different to one that she's been used to, she's now the highest figure in the realm, choosing who's going to be the next king or the next queen. And she goes about it in a very different way to, I think, many other people or characters in books actually would. She's very clever, and she's always thinking, she's very conscious of trying to find who the traitor is. She's very worried about choosing the person who murdered the queen, who's set to gain the most from the queen's death. And I think that really helps her get to know all of the characters, and then the plot takes it in some brilliant directions. I love the way it takes it, and it's each turn actually surprised me, which, I mean, to be fair, usually I don't really guess twists or anything like that, never able to do that, so I wasn't able to guess much here. But still, even just the avenues that E.J.Beaton took the plot down were really different to what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought what was great was it's not just a surprise, like it just comes out of nowhere. It's like you're given, when you find the answer, it all makes sense, but it's really hard to get to that point before. And that feeling when the penny drops, I was like, whoa. And it was really brilliant. As I said, the plot's about acquiring information. It's quite a slow burner overall, but there's still some very punchy moments. There's especially the dialogue. I think the dialogue is very key to this story, and Beaton writes it brilliantly. She avoids exposition and just very naturally drops information to the reader, so you're in the loop the whole time.
Yeah, I really like the dialogue because I'll link it back to Joe Abercrombie again. Joe Abercrombie, I think, has the strongest dialogue I've read, where it feels so natural and it feels like he doesn't have to think too much about it. But what I like about Beaton's writing, her dialogue, it feels like she's really, really thought about each and every word that the character's going to say, and she's trying to get the maximum effect as possible, whether that's conveying a bit more about the story, a bit more about their culture, maybe trying to drip feed to the reader, because it is kind of a detective style novel as well, isn't it? Trying to help the reader figure out who's who did what their motivations are. And I think each time there is dialogue, it's used really well. I really enjoyed how she used her dialogue.
Yes, and going back to that idea that it is so authentic that even though E.J.Beaton has obviously thought very specifically about every single word choice, it makes sense for the political circumstance, and you feel that each leader has their own agendas again. And obviously they're in this political situation, and this circumstance means that they do have to be careful. And so I think that given the style of the book, I think that all the different aspects really blended together really well.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? There's many different factors of this book, but each one really blends well together, which I really enjoyed. And next we will talk about prose. William and I always like to look for nicely written words, and whether it's a really effective use of language and it's quite fluid, or sometimes if it's nice and flowery. So about the prose, I think it was beautifully written. I think it was really nicely well done. There were times when I'd read a paragraph and I just had to read it, several times again, just to kind of appreciate the language. There are lots of layers to E.J.Beaton's writing.
I think that much like the characters, the prose was very refined. I think that it was really rich and beautiful, but stripped back simultaneously. I thought it was a perfect tone for the story. Because it is about political intrigue, but the acquiring of information, and the prose really dripped bits of information slowly. But whilst there's a lot to take in, E.J.Beaton made sure that it wasn't unnatural exposition, and I think that it was really expertly implemented into the story.
Definitely.
And just last bit about prose, I thought that whilst there were those punchy moments, I think that it really built quite slowly as a slow burner to the end, the climax, which was massive. We'll talk a bit more about that later. And I think that they both really worked well. She gave you moments, quite a rush throughout, but it was mostly a slow burner, and the tension just gradually rose and rose. Also with the prose, I felt that the style, the kind of stripped back but rich, quite intellectual feel and tone to the prose, I think that it perfectly mirrored the character of Lysande. I thought that it was really well done. I love it, like in Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London, where the prose really mirrors the main protagonist, and that's in that example, Peter Grant, the police constable, which I'm really enjoying at the moment.
And it feels like if it was written from someone else's point of view, the whole writing would be different, wouldn't it? And I think that's a testament to E.J.Beaton's skill with her prose.
And I think it really shows that you have an unreliable narrator and you're seeing the world through their perspective. And it was really interesting. I think it drives that characterization forward because you really understand Lysande.
Especially in the detective kind of plot as well.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it shows that you're seeing what she's thinking and what she thinks, and that's why later on when the penny drops, what eluded her also eluded you, because you're seeing it through her own thought process, and it just again made all the plot make sense, and the prose really nicely interlinked with those different themes.
And next we will go on to action. We love action-orientated books, don't we? Just read The Time of Courage. If you haven't read it, you will know.
The entire book.
But yeah, so obviously we like reading about action, whether it's about wars or whether it's single combats, that kind of thing. And I think E.J.Beaton used her action really well. It wasn't numerous. It wasn't every other chapter, was it, at all?
No.
But I think in this case, less is more, which is
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
definitely learnt from reading The Councillor, that the less action was actually used, the harder the impact I think it had. That it was really effective, and I think there were only two really kind of set pieces of action. One in the beginning that was a little bit smaller scale and used a bit more for the plot, and then I think later on at the crescendo, like you mentioned earlier, the big climax and the action there was absolutely brutal, was brilliant, and I didn't really see it coming. Sometimes the action came a bit out of nowhere, which I think,
So you knew something was building, the tension was rising,
and it keeps the reader on their toes. So I loved the action. I think it was written really well, quite realistic as well. What I felt. So, it was quite exhilarating. I think that's the word I'd use for it. What about you,
definitely. I think that the action. I think that E.J.Beaton, she's got so many strong aspects to her writing that she didn't have to rely on the action. She has a smaller scale piece earlier on and a much larger piece.
Yeah.
And I say much larger, I mean it was a massive climax. And I think that she showed in both circumstances that it was really, really well done. I think it served to drive characterization as well as the plot, and it really showed that she's got a strength across all aspects of the story.
Absolutely.
And as Ed said, it was exhilarating. It was those chapters, it switched from the more cautious political prose to quite an exhilarating adrenaline rush.
Pumping.
Yeah, adrenaline rush, a page turner. And it was really great to see that shift in tone work so well.
Next up, we will talk about world building. Obviously, we like to read about worlds that actually feel realistic, or that they've got history to. And the world building here, I really enjoyed the world building for The Councillor. I don't know about you, Will, but I think there was an intriguing political system that I found fascinating, as well as it was done really well in depth as well. I think, and also the character, the style of Lysande, who is a scholar. She spends lots of her time reading about history, translating old texts. And I think,
scholar.
yeah, exactly. She used her information, her knowledge of the world, which E.J.Beaton obviously has done a good job of creating that world. She used that in her conversations, in her dialogue with other characters, such as Luca Fontaine, because he was very, very clever, and she was trying to show that she knew a little bit about the world as well. And I think that really enhanced it, because the characters were talking so much about the history. It kind of felt like there was a world there. It did feel real to me. Also, I'll say the titles, I think, for the main characters were really well done. Like, you've got the First Sword, you've got the Iroquois or the Iroquois, I think. Although some of them felt a little bit generic, like the White Queen, the Iron Queen, that kind of thing, which felt a little bit jarring, quite a shift from something so unique to The Councillor, the whole Renaissance Italy vibe that the cities and the cultures gave off. And then comparing it to the White Queen, which it feels like a name you could hear in many fantasy books, doesn't it? So I think apart from that, I really enjoyed the world building. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I think the same. I think I agree completely with that. Some were a bit generic, but that's a very, very minor criticism. And as you said, the main characters are really important parts. They were very unique. I want to talk a bit more about the class system, the political system, and I thought it was really brilliantly done.
Yeah,
I think that E.J.Beaton took the trope that Lysande, a lowborn, is pushed into a setting with the nobility where she's in charge, and there's obviously going to be that clash of the class system. And I think that whilst in most books you see the protagonist makes that their main focus and they're worried about that, and it does make sense, it's authentic, but I found it really refreshing that, again, E.J.Beaton gave a new approach where Lysande just really took it into her stride. She knew that she had to be firm, and you see how she approaches this situation.
so again, linking back to character, isn't it? All of this feeds into how the characters are portrayed.
It's that natural feeling. They all blend together.
Yeah. Well, I will also mention the magic as well. Usually I don't really read fantasy too much for kind of the in-depth magic systems, but I like the kind of whole elemental feel of magic, similar to what Dad's done in his books, in The Faith and the Fallen. The elemental magic using fire and water and the earth and the air, that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed the magic portrayal in this book. Also, there are several themes and kind of ideas that are written into, like I said, the layers again of E.J.Beaton's writing, and one of them, same-sex relationships. I think it was done really subtly, really well. Didn't feel forced at all, like some other books that I've read sometimes. So I really enjoyed the portrayal of these characters, and also it just felt natural, which I think is exactly what you're looking for in a book. You know, you want everything to feel as natural as possible. It doesn't feel like it's there for a tick or anything like that. You know, which I really enjoyed. I also like how she combated the issue of drug addiction. And how someone succumbs to drug addiction as well. I think it was really well done, quite sensitive. I think is a good way of putting it, really. But it's also very subtle as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it was really done really sensitively, and I think that part of it being natural is really important because when I think themes are kind of shoved into a book just for the sake of it, I think it can feel very jarring. But E.J.Beaton puts all those in, and it really fits together, and it just suits the world. And I thought again, just really, really sensitively and well done.
Thank you for watching our review of The Councillor by E.J.Beaton. We really enjoyed this book, and we hope that you enjoy it too. Please let us know in the comments below if you plan on picking this up, if you've pre-ordered it, if you have read it, what did you think of it? So please let us know.
Yeah, so we really enjoyed recording this review and reading The Councillor. Again, we loved it. Everyone please pre-order, and that will be farewell from us for now. So bye from the brothers Gwynne. Truth and courage.
Truth and courage.
Stay safe.